Welcome back, everyone. I have a special guest here with me today. Her name is Jess London, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. But we actually found each other on Instagram, I think a couple years ago. And if you've listened to my podcast interviews, you know that I just make friends with people because I decide I like you and I want to be friends with you. So thank you for coming. I can't wait for you to share your story. You want to start with introducing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Jessica London. I am actually a doctor of physical therapy. So I specialize in rehab and further now through my journey, through my story, I now specialize as a pelvic floor specialist, working with preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and return to strength training. But yeah, I'm a mama to two little kiddos under 5. I'm married to my husband for almost 12 years now. We reside in Arizona, in the sunny Arizona state. And that's just like a quick synopsis of me.
Yes. I love that you do physical therapy, pelvic floor physical therapy specifically, because before, let's see what year, 2017, I don't know that I had ever heard of it, or maybe only of one person doing it. And then I ended up needing to go see a pelvic floor physical therapist after I had my first daughter. And it was so helpful in knowing how accessible you are because you do it all online. You can help so many women.
Yeah, it's really what we aim for and why we're so different. I always say I had to leave healthcare and join fitness and wellness because we were not able to meet moms specifically and busy
Yeah.
women and professionals specifically, like where we needed to meet them to give them that comprehensive, high quality concierge level care. And so healthcare system can be broken at times. And so what we were finding is that similar pattern of really needing to meet women and moms where they're at. So like being able to do it virtually just reduces a lot of barriers and access to getting them the support that they really need. So I'm glad that you also were a participant of that and have seen yourself the massive transformation that can happen when you do.
Yes, absolutely. So you said you started out just in physical therapy, right? Can
Mhm.
you share more about your story and why you made the switch? Was there something that happened for you that led to that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I always say that moms who own businesses, it's really comes from a deep desire, passion, mission focused. If you're starting a
Yeah,
business as a mom, it is likely because something happened to you, shifted in you, transformed you, that you now need to feel so compelled to change the world and share that with others. So that's really my
same.
journey, right? Same. Yeah. I think that's very true for a lot of other mom business owners that I talk to as well. And that really happened for me. So before really specializing in public health, I was in orthopedic medicine and I specialized in general outpatient orthopedic injuries and post-surgical rehabilitation. So we're thinking like ankle sprains and shoulder
Mm.
sprains, back injuries, all the way to ACL repairs and post-operative knee replacements. And then I also really
Mm.
specialized in workers' comp too. So functional training was really important to be able to not only heal someone from this injury, but also calculate why did it happen? How can we prevent it from happening again? And how do we get this person functionally strong again so that they can go back and do their activities of daily living and their career? That's what I did for about 3 years, was a director of a clinic, oversaw that clinic for about 2 of those years. And then I got pregnant myself and went down the road of pregnancy and postpartum myself. Ended up
Yeah.
planning a home birth, but had a very different other agenda and had a
Yeah.
very long, laborious process and ended up safely transferring to the hospital. But that's really where I got to, for the first time, experience my own hospital stay and hospital experience. And eventually that led to my first major surgery, which was a C-section, having my baby.
How
And
was that emotionally for you? I know I'm going a little bit of a different, but I'm just curious, having a home birth planned, starting at home, and then things going in a completely different direction.
it was very emotionally turbulent for me. And I think that
Yeah.
this was really a huge humbling lesson and an awakening for me as a woman and eventually becoming a mom too. I think it was necessary for my development and for my growth and my nervous system capabilities, to be quite honest with you. I can say that
Yeah.
now because it's, 5 years past and it took me about a full year to fully process and understand
Mm.
what happened. But that first year was really challenging for me to really put the pieces together. I felt like, oh, I can just plan birth, especially the first time mom. We just don't know what we don't know, right? And I really was like, I'm going to plan this beautiful home birth and have no intervention. And I really
Yeah.
prepared my body physically, but not mentally. And so I learned that through
Mm.
that process of what does surrendering look like? What does trusting the process look like? What does being able to
Yes.
calibrate our nervous system when we feel uncomfortable and when we're in pain? How do we train for that? And I didn't do much of that training myself, just out of being naive. And then
Mm.
that transfer almost felt like an emotional failure. Like I let myself
Mm.
down. I let my body down. How could my body not birth? I ended up having a C-section. Like, what's wrong
Yeah.
with me? I went through all these different emotional rides, if you will.
Yeah.
And I say it was destined for me in a lot of ways because actually my greatest pain became my greatest purpose. And it's actually what led me to create the company, Your Postpartum PT and Wellness, and to be
Oh, I'm
able to
getting
like, meet
teary-eyed.
moms where they're at. I know
Yeah.
it's literally has become such a pivotal moment in my life, but it didn't feel like
Mhm.
that in the moment.
Absolutely not. I'd want to sit with that just for a minute because in the moment when something really tough and really hard is happening, the most common response is resistance. I've been there to some extent. Right now, I'm there with something right now. And it only makes it more painful. And it's not that we need to rush the process or to make ourselves think differently, but when we're ready after letting out that frustration, that anger, that whatever else is coming up, disappointment, sadness. What if the universe has your back and this is happening for you? What is the gift here
So
that
hard to see that in the moment, right?
it can be? Yeah. And
Mhm.
what I've noticed is the more times that I acknowledge and kind of even look back, oh, look at the gift there. Oh, look at what the benefit that I got here. Look at what I got to do because that didn't happen. It's easier and easier to shift into that faster and faster. Has that been your experience too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was
Yeah.
probably the first awakening to that, to be able to
Yeah.
look at it from a different lens and a different perspective. In that moment, it felt like it was like the worst thing that ever happened to me because I am very privileged and I lived a great life. And that was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me in that moment. And that was challenging,
Mm.
but it was actually my greatest lesson for myself. It was extremely
Mm.
humbling in a lot of ways. It gave me new lens, new perspective on birth, but also compassion and love and empathy. It really
Now I
rolled
have
in.
goosebumps.
Oh, it rolled into so many of those things. And now I can see it took me about a year, but I would say I look back and I was like, that was so divinely orchestrated.
Mm.
And I can even say that, like, leading to my second birth experience, which I can jump ahead if you want a little bit,
Yeah,
but it's like,
sure.
in that moment, it was so challenging, so hard. I was really ready to see. I was like, well, I guess the silver lining is that I'm a PT and I could rehab myself now because I know birth rehab. But then it was like, wait a second, my PT program and the healthcare system doesn't really give you any resources. I was ready for this PT to round the room and no one ever came. And that was like
Mm.
the door open for me to really realize, holy smokes, moms are literally having surgery and just left to figure this out on their own. There's no discharge from the hospital from a PT or OT. There is no instructions or protocols for this C-section surgery like we would normally have for an ACL surgery and an ankle surgery and a shoulder surgery. We have very strict protocols that we follow in the rehab space. And where's the C-section rehab
That's not
protocol? That's also
okay.
major abdominal surgery. So
That
it was like,
is,
whoa,
yeah.
this pain that I was experiencing, this turbulence was also met with this fiery, like,
It
anger at the same
activated
time.
you.
Oh, it totally activated this
Mm.
burning, like, passion and desire,
Yeah.
this anger, frustration of how we are literally letting moms go through that type of birth experience and then just be left to figure out their entire rehab on their own. And thank God, I think about myself, all of the knowledge and all of the skills and all the education that I have. Thank God I had that because I was able to piece together my own rehab program from everything that I've knew and the thousands of clients that I've served and worked on. I pieced together my own rehab protocol, but I thought about all the moms that
I have
literally
no
had no
idea.
clue,
No idea.
no idea, and the slightest regard. And fast forward, That's what actually ended up having me start Your Postpartum Beauty and Wellness, with the mission to meet mothers where they're at and change the standard of care for birth prep and postpartum recovery, because we can do so much in birth prep. But really, I started that company from that fiery passion. But then a couple years after, I had the chance of having another home birth experience with my second. And I approached birth in a very different place because of the work that I did on my nervous system and the work that I did to really learn to surrender and to trust. And that was always a challenge for me in life. It still is up to this day. We're never completely
we're never
evolved,
done.
right?
Yeah.
No. But then I was able to meet that birth experience with a different viewpoint and lens, and like no judgment and no hard and fast rules. And it has to be this way and it's only going this way. And I really just surrendered into the process and had my beautiful home birth redeeming experience for my second child. So then I got to experience a vaginal birth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this all makes sense. Like, what better person to serve mothers in pregnancy, birth prep, and postpartum and return to strength training than someone who has literally had two polar opposite birth experiences of the 3-day labor, all the interventions, had the C-section, to my next birth was like 8 hours, very straightforward, birthed at home, no intervention. So I literally have had the whole gamut
That
of
gave me goosebumps
experiences.
again.
Right?
Yes.
And so I'm like, this makes so much sense. This is so divinely orchestrated. I am so protected and guided, and this is the path that I'm meant to be on. And we've just expanded and grown from there. But that's really the transformation and the journey from my pain to like my purpose.
I love that so freaking much, so much. And I know there were some things that you said when you were leading into the second birth that you approached differently, and you listed them off quickly. And I know that somebody who's earlier in their inner work journey might have been like, whoa, 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 wait a second. Like, what did you just say? Whether they're about to give birth or not, these things are helpful for them. Can we just go back and revisit
Please.
some of
Yes,
that?
would love to.
I know I heard you talk about surrender, letting go of control. So just kind of, what do you think about sharing? Well, prior to the first birth or in life, before doing inner work, I would have approached it this way. And this is what I did instead.
Yeah. So for my first birth experience, I was pretty like black and white. This is my plan.
So
I would say I'm probably like a recovering perfectionist, type A. I don't feel like I'm like that at all anymore. Maybe certain glimmers of me. But yeah, approaching my first birth, I was like, this is what's going to happen. It's no ifs, ands, and buts. There's no room for like negotiation. And it's black or it's white. I am in control. I am the one that can educate myself and do all these things. I'm going to eat the dates and do the exercises and do all the things that's like checking off of the list and the protocols that you're supposed to do. And I really was more so outwardly trying to set everything up to be just perfect for my first birth experience. For my second, the difference is I didn't do any of that stuff. I didn't look at the checklists. I didn't need dates. I like did some prenatal strengthening stuff and pelvic opening stuff that I knew would just support my body and my baby to be in a good position. Yeah. But I really instead went inward instead of outward, right? Yes. I think that the first birth experience, I was looking to all the gurus and all the checklists and all the things that I needed to do and
the control.
Making sure I was perfect. Yeah, I got an A+ for my birth prep. And then like my second birth was like, I really just dismantled what does that even mean? Went inward to first and foremost really process and heal my first birth experience. And I knew that if there was that emotional blockage there for me, that when labor started or when I got to the point in my labor process where I felt stuck, my body wouldn't be able to do that release work. And so much of my work preparing for my second birth was really just in everyday life, allowing myself to allow my body to be like, what does today hold? And if something didn't go to plan, like, oh, I have this planned out for the day. It was like, how did I react in those situations? How did I navigate that uncomfortable situation? Yeah, with curiosity. I really let go of the parameters around it and was open to a lot of different possibilities and really went inward into my belief systems and what I knew my body to be capable. I really developed deep trust within myself and kind of like played out
Yes.
this manifestation visualization of like if it was already done. And I just didn't do
Yes.
any of that for that first experience.
None of that. It was all external factors. What can I control versus internally? How can I get really curious about the way that I've been showing up, the way that I can show up, healing, letting go, surrendering. Oh, I love that so much. There was one thing that you said that I worked on between my two deliveries as well. You mentioned an emotional block being a possibility. Well, I did unmedicated deliveries for both. They were both hospital births, though. And the first, I ended up pushing for 5.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. And although I could have experienced greater birth trauma for sure, it definitely left me in a position where I was scared that that was going to happen again. I had ran a marathon before, so like I knew what it felt like to run a marathon, and I felt like I had run 2 marathons while trying
Mm,
to push her out. Yeah, and I had resistance coming up and just a lot of fear and a lot of scared feelings. And so I too did work with a holistic pelvic floor physical therapist back then to help me reprocess that birth and clear that out and go in without that emotional block or baggage.
that was so important too. If we are not willing to address some of those internal resistances that we have, they will come up in birth. And I did it
Yes.
similar as for that as well as, you know, my first birth experience. I wasn't progressing. I wasn't dilating. And
Mm,
they kept checking me and kept telling me. And it was like this report card, right? Of
yeah.
like how far along you are dilated. And then when I finally got there, I also pushed for hours. So those were two things that I knew going in would be emotional blockages for me as well.
Mhm.
So I actually opted out of any cervical checks. I didn't
Yeah.
want to know. It was like the
Yeah.
mystery, right? It was a totally different of I need the report card. I want to know where I'm at and when how far my body is dilating and I need to know the
Yeah.
number. And like that was the first birth experience. And the second was like I don't want to know actually at all where my body is at from a dilation perspective.
Yeah.
And I just let my body do its thing without any intervention and just trusted that my body was dilating and
Mhm.
opening. And then I got to that pushing phase. And I remember about 30 minutes in of pushing for my second, I felt that resistance also come up for me as well.
Mm.
And I just remember this is the power of having an incredible team too. But I just remember looking at my midwife and being like, I don't know, I think she's stuck because that's what happened with my first, like,
Yeah.
stuck
Yeah.
position. And she was like, your body's doing exactly what it needs to do.
Yeah.
And you're doing a great job. Just let's surrender and let's let baby do its work. And it was like someone else. I think that's really important to the process too, is sometimes we can do all the work internally and be prepared, but then
Yeah.
having the people that are surrounding us during hard times or during those more challenging times that just reflect in us and mirror in us
Hmm.
how that internal work is paying off and just keep
Yes.
reminding of us our power, our wisdom, our truth, all of those things can be so pivotal too in any
Yes.
process, whether it's a birth process or just in life going through
Yeah.
challenging times.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That validation, you're on the right track. Everything is going exactly as it's supposed to. Yeah. As we were talking a minute ago, I realized, and I think this is maybe one of the first moments where I was brought back to myself. Listen to your intuition. I would say in childhood, highly intuitive. And then over time, I moved away from that because of all the, oh, you should do this job, do it in this order. This is the right, this is the wrong. And so I disconnected from my intuition and I was really starting to come back to myself. But this was a huge, huge lesson for me because while I was in labor with my first, I had this moment where I wanted to sit on the toilet. And they swept me up from that toilet and were like, that means you're ready to push. And then I
Oh,
started
wow.
pushing and I have full body goosebumps right now. I wasn't. I needed to let her come down. So going into my second birth, it coincidentally or perfectly divinely created, but it was March 24th, 2020. So nobody was there. Even though I was in the
Wow.
hospital, we were alone. It was just me and my husband. So I was only listening and only doing exactly what my body wanted to do, with nobody telling me it should go faster or now it's time to push or this or that. And I had a nurse practitioner midwife, and after I had my second, she was 10 pounds, 8 ounces. And she said, you
Wow.
pushed her out in 10 minutes.
That's incredible. I hope everyone listening right knows like how incredibly powerful and intuitively our bodies are designed to be able to do really
Yes.
challenging things like that, that on paper, that would be like, oh no, you need a
She's too
C-section or she's
big.
too
Yeah.
big. You're not able to
Yeah.
push her out. And like you literally just worked with the baby, your
I just
baby.
worked with her. Yes. And
Hmm.
somebody afterwards said to me, no one in the hospital, but somebody that I used to work with, she's like, you're crazy. And it's no, you've got work to do. But I'm yeah, no, it was so beautiful.
Hmm.
So beautiful. I'm so glad that you used that experience to let you evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. It was an evolution journey. It was like another level of trust within myself that happened. And birthing independently by listening to your intuition without there being a whole lot of control and parameters, to be honest with you, I think it even sharpens our intuition and our self-trust within ourselves. Because
Yeah.
if we allow our bodies to be able to tune in like that through the birth process, it will only continue to deepen all of those channels and all of those pathways inside of us
100%.
after birth too. And I really do think that that birth experience shaped how I meet certain challenges, whether it's in business, as a business owner, and motherhood, whatever it might be. We are developing these pathways and these internal programs for ourselves and belief systems. If we can do that, we can pretty much do all kinds of things, right? In my
Anything.
body, right? If you can birth an 11-pound baby unmedicated
Yes.
in the hospital, holy
Yes.
smokes, it just shows the incredible wisdom and power our bodies hold. And so it just allows us to be able to come back to that moment and continue to trust ourselves.
I couldn't agree more. And coming back to your intuition and building self-trust is something that now I work with all my clients on, because it's so important. So freaking important. Okay, Jess, is there anything else that you wanted to share about your journey? Maybe if somebody they resonate with, oh yeah, I have been trying to control everything from the outside. Anything else you want to share about helpful parts of your transformation or what you do now or anything that comes up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we do is really very unique than the standard pelvic floor rehab. And it really is blending my experiences and our coaches working with our clients one-on-one too, from this like really holistic standpoint too. So I think that when we're preparing for birth or recovering from birth, or just like when we're preparing for a new job, whatever it might be, right, wherever you're at, it really is important to get away from the black and white and to really get comfortable in the gray. Like get comfortable
Yes.
being uncomfortable.
Yes.
I feel like when we can be quicker to that, like over time, when we first start putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations and doing things anyways and finding that courage and that bravery and all of the things that we need to do to lean into that process, like lean in versus lean out, I feel like we take that more holistic approach when we include not only our body, our mind, physically, emotionally, spiritually. We really take all of those accounts into how we work with clients too. And so I would say that my journey, my experiences have really shaped the program and the support level that we really believe women and mothers deserve. And a lot of times we end up talking about a lot of different things outside of just pelvic floors that is really more related to like, how are you managing your stress on a day to day? What has your sleep been like? Tell me more about your nutrition. And we start to put all of these pieces and these gaps together. Tell me more about what your beliefs are. Do you believe that you're going to heal? Do you believe that you won't have pain with intimacy anymore? And a lot of times, these predictors for healing and recovery are really embedded in like this woman or this mom's internal belief patterns and systems. And really, how much have they gone the distance to be able to trust themselves and their bodies as well throughout this process? And how willing and able and open are they able to trust us to be able to hold them in that space and to be able to guide them as that expert in that space? Because that's typically what we see in the clients that we love working with. They tend to be a little bit further along in that journey of not only self-trusting themselves, and they're open, they believe healing is possible, and they believe they're going to get creative to do whatever they need to do to make it happen, and they have that deep wisdom and trust within themselves. But it's also the allowance of bringing other people in their circle without judgment or fear or resentment or whatever it might be, just allowing others to be brought in on that journey and like more of that coaching element too, willing to be open to receive love and support too. So I would say that that's been a big transition for me in my life that we now like interweave into what we do on a day-to-day basis as well.
I'm so freaking happy to hear that, because there are so many individuals in the medical field, different doctors, where it's so siloed. And just to know, to the extent possible that you can, you're bringing in the emotional aspect, the nutritional aspect, the mental aspect, the beliefs, the physical, in integrating that so that they can have an even bigger transformation is so different, needed, and valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing what you do. I have one, well, maybe two last questions. First one, a lot of women who are listening have moments where they either feel emotionally or physically broken. If somebody listening today is feeling that way, what would you want her to know?
Get quiet, sit with yourself, start journaling or asking yourself questions and then listening to the answers that come up. Because I think that when in our moments of brokenness and in our lowest moments, we actually have the greatest connection to source and to God and to the universe. And so in those moments are actually when we're really meant to get quiet and start asking questions and letting our bodies and guide us to what those answers are. We have so much power and wisdom and intuition inside of ourselves that in my belief system, it's like we have all of that inside of us. So we just need to be able to learn the skills and the tools to be able to tap in a little quicker and easier. So that's what I would say is get quiet with yourself, start asking questions, trust the answers that come up, trust the questions that come up too, because oftentimes when we sit in silence, we're like, why am I even thinking about that? Lean into that. Like, why are you thinking about that? Right? And keep asking why, and deeper and deeper. You end up finding that root of where that pivot or transformation needs to happen.
Yeah. And the fact that you bring in so much curiosity and that's a big piece of what you just shared, I couldn't agree more. Curiosity can just be so healing in and of itself rather than judgment and resisting what's coming up. Okay. If listeners want to find you, what's the best place for them to find you?
Absolutely on Instagram right now. I would say it's at your postpartum PT. We're pretty active on there. I try to offer a lot of valuable tools and resources. And when you land on that page, you also find access to a free community for pelvic floor mini course and 7-day challenge that you can get off the platform if you choose. But you can also find us on our podcast as well called What About Mom? And we are really rolling in with weekly episodes there as well.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on today.
Yes, thanks for having me.